Have you ever wondered why being in nature makes you feel so peaceful, or experienced the euphoria of sprouting a seed? Well, there's a reason, and it's rooted deep in our collective history. My name is Muggsy, and in this video I'm going to give you an introduction to the amazing field of horticultural therapy, as well as share some of my top tips on how to integrate plants into your life in a meaningful way. Gardening has really helped me in so many ways, from inspiring awe and curiosity to helping me chase away some cynicism, as well as honing the powers of my intention. Not to mention the fact that it's helped me connect to people from so many different walks of life in a meaningful, productive way, and it's fed me. For these reasons, I became a horticultural therapist, and I've been in the field for 8 years. Most people I encounter have never even heard of horticultural therapy, which is partially why I want to make this video, to share some of the wisdom as well as raise awareness of its existence. So first, let's define horticulture. Coming from the Latin word hortus, meaning garden, and culture, meaning to cultivate, horticulture is basically the art and science of growing plants. In terms of horticultural therapy, we widen the definition a little bit to really include all interactions with plants, including passive but mindful experiences in nature, as well as nature crafting. Now, horticultural therapy is at its core people working with plants in an intentional way. A horticultural therapist is trained not just to grow plants, but also how to facilitate these interactions. Knowledgeable in propagation, but also in how to use horticulture to support the growth of the people we serve. It is art, it is science, and it can be play. Horticultural therapy is in the family of other activity-based therapies such as art therapy or music therapy, and it's closely related to other nature-based therapy like wilderness therapy or animal-assisted therapy. I received a certificate in horticultural therapy from the New York Botanical Gardens after completing an internship and taking classes in the fundamentals of gardening, adaptive garden design, as well as classes specifically geared towards the characteristics and etiologies of a variety of populations that we serve. I believe it's safe to assume that humans have always taken solace in cultivating a relationship with nature. The first literary reference to gardens for pleasure comes to us from Lower Sumer in Mesopotamia, where in the Epic of Gilgamesh, he states that 1/3 of the city is garden. Trace the first use of gardens as a treatment modality to ancient Egypt, where court physicians would prescribe walks in the palace gardens as a way to help people who were experiencing mental illness. Nature has always been not just a source of abundance, but also respite and wellness. Dr. Benjamin Rush, who many consider to be the father of American psychiatry and was also a signer of the Declaration of Independence, used horticulture in the treatment of people with mental illness. In 1798, he published his findings about the positive psychological benefits and inspired more research and development of the field. Subsequently, in 1817, Friends Hospital, a psychiatric institution in Philadelphia, was built to imitate a park-like setting, where residents not only got to grow edible and ornamental plants, but enjoyed shaded landscaped walks, forest pathways, and grassy meadows. This was an innovative design and programmatic approach which utilized both the active and passive restorative benefits of the natural environment. Throughout the 1800s, gardening became a well-established addition to treatments for people with psychological or mental disabilities used throughout the world. After World War I and World War II, hospitals began incorporating gardening into their programmatic design to treat physical rehabilitation goals as well as emotional. Much of this work was done by volunteer community gardeners who would come to the hospital and offer their time to help veterans. This was a time when many people were planting victory gardens, a collective effort to supplement rations that was in part encouraged by the government. People turning to gardens in a time of crisis and shortage, who can imagine? The term horticultural therapy doesn't pop up until 1940 in workshops provided by Michigan State University, mainly geared towards occupational therapists. In the 1970s, more universities included training in horticultural therapy, and in 1972, the National Council for Therapy and Rehabilitation through Horticulture was formed. This professional organization helped to develop and promote the field. They changed their name in 1988 to what we now know today as the American Horticultural Therapy Association. They offer a way for professions to meet, share experience, as well as education and a national registration. Today, horticultural therapy is practiced throughout the world and is widespread in Japan, Hong Kong, Korea, Germany, the UK, Sweden, and Italy. My journey journey in horticultural therapy started with my role as a program coordinator for a garden and nutrition program in 2 alternative high schools in New York City. The mission of our program was to keep the students engaged in school, especially those most at risk of dropping out. I saw what a refuge the garden space became, where many different students, some of whom were young parents, were living in poverty, or were dealing with otherwise really difficult situations at home, would find something within the garden that would bring them joy. For some, it was a platform for their natural leadership abilities. For others, it was a source of education in nutrition, cooking, or as a supplement to their biology and earth science classes. And for others, it was just a quiet space to reflect. A lot of the students that I worked with didn't have a lot of access to nature and were at first hesitant to get dirty or eat something that they saw came from the ground. But with a little bit of time and encouragement, they were soon excited to cultivate plants. It was during this period of time that I first learned about the field of horticultural therapy and began to take my classes at the New York Botanical Gardens. After 4 years of working with these amazing students and learning so much from them, I decided to further my education and my professional goals by taking a position as an instructor in the Greenhouse Horticultural Therapy program on Rikers Island. Here, I participated in an internship and worked under the therapist Hilda Cruz. So much to say about that experience and more than I can share here, but what I will say is that I saw firsthand how horticultural therapy can bring transformative experiences, moments of real happiness and beauty to one of the ugliest places in the world. Now I serve children and adults with developmental disabilities, working in community respite settings as well as in group homes. And it is the great joy of my life. I've shared so many beautiful moments and bore witness to so many transformative experiences working alongside individuals, gardening and making nature crafts, as well as progressing towards physical, social, emotional, and vocational goals. During the quarantine, it became really popular for people to start exploring gardening for the first time, which makes perfect sense when you think about it. Gardening grows not just peace of mind, but also food security. Remember those victory gardens? We live in a time now of increased urbanization, and the quarantine only amplifies our alienation and potential separation from nature. I think the preponderance of internet trends like cottagecore speaks to this yearning to reconnect to nature. In these times, gardening can be a balm for the soul. I feel that because of my experience and training in this unique field, I'm in a position to share some wisdom on how to deepen your relationship with plants and make the most out of your time spent in nature. Even if you're not working with a trained therapist or doing gardening in some sort of a treatment program, there is so much to be gained from intentional gardening. So without further ado, here is this horticultural therapist guide on how to integrate plants into your life for increased well-being. Tip number 1, surround yourself with plants. As much as possible, incorporate nature and biodiversity into the settings in which you find yourself. I'm talking spending times outdoors, in a garden, and indoors with houseplants. This even includes incorporating images or tokens of nature into your indoor environments, such as prints of natural landscapes, stones, bones, shells. One of the main tenets of horticultural therapy is accessibility, that everyone can derive benefits from a relationship with nature, even if they are limited in their access or ability. One of the reasons that horticultural therapy works is that humans have an innate love of nature. For thousands of years, our ancestors evolved and relied solely on their natural environments to survive. The plants, the animals, the water. Because of this, we have an unlearned tendency to pay attention to the natural scenery around us, and we derive particular pleasure from scenes that evoke our surviving and thriving. One framework for understanding human affinity for nature is biophilia, or love of life, a hypothesis from Keller and Wilson that states that the human connection to nature grows from our innate tendency to focus on life and lifelike processes. Because of this, we have a positive psychological and physiological response to being in nature. There's quite a bit of research to support these ideas. In a landmark study, View from a Window May Influence Recovery from Surgery, environmental design researcher Roger S. Ulrich documented that post-operative gallbladder surgery patients who had a view of nature from their window experienced shorter hospital stays, less requests for pain medication, and had more positive staff evaluations. Positive benefits were also gleaned from pictures of natural landscapes. Other studies show physiological changes in the presence of a view of nature, such as reduced muscle tension and lower blood pressure. I believe it's worth mentioning, since I'm dropping all these academic studies, that these studies and psychological frameworks have really helped practitioners to understand why working with nature helps, and have helped to lend legitimacy to the field, as well as other nature-based therapies. That said, I think a lot of this is intuitive and self-evident, and the importance of connection to nature is a wisdom that is inherent to so much indigenous thinking, and it's now being rediscovered by the scientific, academic, and medical field. I think one of the reasons that this wisdom has been forgotten is because of our culture's emphasis on individualism and striving, and not enough time spent just quietly being. Which leads me to my next tip. So tip number 2 is entering into your senses. One of the biggest challenges that I face is quieting the constant chatter of my mind, and cultivating a relationship with nature and plants has really helped me to do this. Instead of fixating on whatever my monkey brain has decided to focus on in that moment, I enter into my senses as a way to anchor myself in my body and in the moment. I have found that this is most effective when I'm in a natural setting such as a garden or outside, or in the naturally restorative setting of my home. This entering into the senses can be framed in a couple of different ways. I consider it for myself a form of grounding, where I recalibrate, feel my feet on the ground, and bring my attention to my bodily sensations and their interaction with their environment. This can be done in conjunction with the 5-4-3-2-1 mindfulness technique, which is often used to combat anxiety, where you look around and you name to yourself 5 things that you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. I cannot really overemphasize how powerful this technique can be in terms of combating times of very high stress. Sensory-based mindfulness also doesn't need to be as structured as all that anyway. When taking a walk in nature or sitting in a garden, often the setting is so beautiful and naturally engaging that one doesn't need to consciously enter into the senses, it just happens naturally. This is related to the concept of attention restoration theory, which basically states that after a hard day's work where one is focusing their mind specifically on the task at hand, one taxes their attention and can develop fatigue and irritation. By entering into a natural environment, one can wrest the powers of their directed attention and, in fact, restore their energy. In order to maximize this effect, the environment should be, in a sense, a refuge, away from reminders of responsibilities, as well as beautiful and engaging enough to offer a sense of fascination and novelty. This natural attraction to various elements in your environment, this awe and curiosity that nature invokes, elicits involuntary attention. It pulls you in with its beauty and provides respite. You can foster the power of your senses and involuntary attention by taking the time to be and observe while in nature. Notice the subtle changes and growth in your houseplants. Feel the glossy texture of their leaves. Notice the light refracting. When you're taking a walk, hear the trills of the birds and feel the cool breeze on your skin. This applies especially to people living in an urban environment. I'm coming to you from New York City, and let me tell you, nature lives here too. We have been for too long collectively affected by a plant blindness, glossing over the amazing, resilient life that thrives on the edges. Anyone who knows me knows that I have a particular fondness for these weedy, wild urban dwellers, so I'm a little bit biased, but I really encourage anyone who lives in an urban environment to take note of the beings that thrive in our environment. Because if you can appreciate the wild plants and the pigeons and rats, then let me tell you, you'll always be happy. Speaking of my love for weeds, tip number 3, learn as much as you can and follow your joy. There are so many ways to engage with plants in nature. In any given year, I'll do many different types of activities with the people that I serve. Chances are you will gravitate towards certain types of activities and certain types of plants, like me and my love affair with the wild ones. And naturally, when it comes to horticulture, there will be many types of activities that involve direct care of plants, such as watering and repotting, not to mention the incredibly satisfying world of plant propagation, which is growing plants, like from seed or cutting, grafting, division, and of course this can be to the end of growing edible plants like fruits, vegetables, and herbs, or ornamental plants such as flowers and houseplants. Your choice of plants will of course depend on your situation, your setting, your needs, and your preferences. When it comes to growing and taking care of plants, it can be helpful for some beginners to start small. Many houseplants are incredibly easy to take care of and actually thrive on a little bit of neglect. Whatever plants you choose, there can be a great power in nurturing your plants and watching them grow. And the more knowledge that you have, the greater chance they have of thriving and surviving. Don't be discouraged when problems arise. As beings in an interconnected ecological system, we know that plant diseases, insect infestations, and death are all part of the natural cycle and have a lot to teach us. And there are many resources that are available to deal with these kind of problems. Many botanical gardens, including the New York Botanical Gardens, offer a hotline where you can call up and ask them questions and they will help you with your plants. Obviously, there are many different books that you can read, and although it might seem a little bit unconventional, I have found many answers to plant questions in the community of plant nerds that is Reddit and Facebook. And while you're learning the basics of plant care, take the time to learn the history. Ethnobotany is a fascinating field, and so many plants have really amazing stories, often involving folklore, immigration, medicine. When I began to learn the histories of the wild plants around me, the medicinal properties of the common dandelion, the human folly that led to the ubiquity of Japanese knotweed, the magical mysteries of mugwort, my life changed and improved so much for the better. This knowledge added a new depth to my experience of my relationship with the urban ecology, connecting me to my environment in a way that nothing previously had. And that's because I followed my joy. I got myself a field guide to wild urban plants, and I learned as much as I could. I suggest you do the same for whatever evokes your passion, whether it's plant propagation, ornamental plants such as flowers, flower arranging, bonsai, hydroponics, whatever it is, learn as much as you can and share your joy with others. Tip number 4, cultivate an attitude of gratitude. There is so much suffering and strife in the world, existing simultaneously with incredible beauty. And how we choose to frame our understanding of this world really can impact our psychological and physical well-being. Far be it for me to suggest how you craft your understanding of the universe and your place in it. I, as a horticultural therapist, simply point to nature as a source of wisdom and inspiration. For me, gratitude for nature is foundational in how I choose to frame my understanding of the universe and my place in it. And it's a useful tool in horticultural therapy as well. I find that gratitude is a state of mind that begets itself. When we focus our mind on what we're grateful for, we are teaching ourselves what to focus on. Taking the time to thank plants and the earth for the gifts that they give us can be an important tool in cultivating happiness. This can be seen in a psychological or a spiritual way, or both. When I take time to be mindful and thankful for the plants around me, I feel acutely aware of my enmeshment in a web of energy and at one with the environment and the elements. One of the best ways to express this gratitude and connect to something larger than yourself is to garden with others. Share your knowledge and the fruits of your labor. Many a friendship has been formed through the cultivating of the soil and the breaking of bread. Last tip, tip number 5, is to make note of and intentionally celebrate the cycles of nature. This is a common byproduct of working with plants. Gardeners come to appreciate the changes of the seasons, as well as its cycles of life and death. We take part in its mysteries and we learn that everything happens in due time. Ancient humans would bury their dead with plants, whether it was with flowers or with seeds, which tells us a lot about their spiritual understanding and connection to nature. Working in the garden, the process of decomposition, harnessed in the form of compost, teaches me more about the nature of death than anything in this life I think could. Rhonda Roland Scherer, who studied the philosophical and spiritual aspects of plants in the world of art, enumerated that she views plants not as beautiful, sentimental, or decorative objects, but as universal forms whose very structure offers a window into the underlying vital principles of nature itself. And we see these forms and principles replicated in our cultural myths. The seasons offer a multifaceted spectacle every year, with their natural transformations and their attendant holidays. As we welcome the dark winter, we see the forms of evergreens spread throughout our culture, whether it's our Christmas trees, holly, or mistletoe. We are reminded of the resilience of nature in the face of the long night. In spring, we find joy and hope in the rainbow rebirth of the flowers, and we see symbols of this fertility in the form of magical rabbits and colored eggs. However you choose to celebrate the cycles of nature is up to you. Nature Crafts offers a great way to bring some of the beauty of the outdoors inside, and there's no shortage of nature-based crafts to experiment with. For others, it could simply mean gardening and observing and letting the dots connect where and when they may. For many, the act of pruning, of cutting away parts of the plants so that other parts can thrive, offers an important lesson for ourselves in how we can direct our own energy and cut away that which no longer serves us. The garden has many lessons in patience and humility, in interconnectedness and resilience. Whatever lessons the plants have for you, you will learn in the right moment. I feel incredibly blessed to have the joy and wisdom of plants in my life and to be in a position as a horticultural therapist to share that with you. I hope you enjoyed learning about this emerging professional field, its history and application, as well as some of its scientific and theoretical foundations. And I hope you enjoyed my top tips. If so, please like and subscribe for more intentional gardening content, and let me know in the comments below how nature brings you joy.